Adler from Austin Businesswoman, and today we're going to talk about some topics that every person in business thinks they know something about, but they actually don't. Or you know something about it, but you can always learn more. Do you need a website? Do you need paid ads? Do you need to do SEO? What are those things? What is hosting? What is DNS? What are all those scary terms that people keep telling you need to do for your business? We have someone here who knows all the right answers. It's Thomas Bacon from Workhorse Marketing, and he's going to answer all of our questions and help us unpack this problem of how to get our business online and make it trending and make it ranking high on Google and other engines. So, hi Thomas, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. Really
So,
excited.
so tell us a little bit about your background at Workhorse. What do you do?
So, I'm the Chief Technology Officer, and my role is to make sure that we choose the correct technology solutions for our clients, also to make sure that they're implemented correctly and to support them over the long term relationship with that particular client. And I've been working with Workhorse for about 14 years now. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
Seems like a long journey. Has technology changed a lot since you started?
Yes, it really has. As a matter of fact, I think that's probably one of the most important aspects of my job is to make sure that I stay on top of those changes. The landscape is nothing like it was when we started, and it's certainly the case that if you just stop paying attention, you'll lose. You'll get behind very quickly. You really have to stay on top of the trends in technology.
Absolutely. It seems like you learn one thing and 2 weeks later it's already outdated and you need to to chase the new shiny objects. But there are some basics that I guess stay the same throughout. So you need ever since internet came to life, we need to have online presence for our business. Otherwise, we're not as relevant as our competitors. So in 2022, do we still need to have the classic website? And uh, how do Google Business and social media help us with it?
Yeah, I think the short answer is yes. Yeah, you absolutely do still need a website in 2022. I think that what that website does for your business can vary. Uh, you know, um, I think having a website is still a cornerstone of your brand on the internet, even if you have social media properties, even if you sell on Amazon or Etsy or whatever. Having that cornerstone of your brand is still very important, especially a lot of these other third party platforms. For example, if you are selling online, if you have an e commerce business, a lot of them, like Amazon and Etsy, they can take fees, which could significantly cut into your profits. So you may want to sell on your own website. A website can also be a customer service portal, very important to answer questions, have a way for your customers to contact you. Also, in the current job market, it can be a resource for hiring, for presenting your company to prospective employees. So yeah, it's absolutely important. The relationship between your website and your social media properties and your Google business is very important also. And a lot of times, depending on what you do, I think that um, it can have a more or less important role. So, for example, if you're a restaurant, a local restaurant, Google Business is by far one of the most important channels for your business. However,
Mhm.
Google Business has a symbiotic relationship with your website, and it's very important that Google knows about your website and that your website is properly coded as a local business. So there's a symbiotic relationship there that really can't be ignored. One thing, though, I do think that happens sometimes is people do recognize they need a website, but it's also easy to get in over your head a little bit in terms of what's the analogy I'm looking for? I think your stomach can be uh, uh, what's the analogy I'm looking for about your eyes are bigger than your stomach. Sorry, that's what I was
Oh,
looking.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, sorry. Where you think, yes, I want a website, and on this website, I'm going to sell all my products. I'm going to have a blog that's very active. I'm going to publish content on a regular basis because I've heard that's what I have to do to get ahead. And a lot of times for a small business, you can really get in over your head if you try to do too much with your website. So
Mhm.
it's certainly true that you need a website. You also want to balance that against what do I really have the resources to do? We've seen a lot of clients, for example, who say, I have a brick and mortar retail store and I want to sell my products on my website. That takes a lot of work. It does take a lot of work to sell your products, especially when you're competing against Amazon and other big companies.
Mhm.
A better use of your website might be to help drive traffic to your brick and mortar store, to create brand awareness around your store, rather than to actually sell things through your store. So thinking about how you use your website is very important also.
Yeah, and sometimes a lot of people think that the more information they put on their website, the more things they do might be also counterintuitive because it can be confusing for people who are visiting your website. They don't understand the call to action, they don't understand what's wanted of them. Do they just need to read your blog, or do they need to visit your brick and mortar, or there is some other shiny thing that you need to look at? So sometimes just having a clear message really helps, even though you might have your Google business account. And I saw a lot of, as you mentioned, restaurants locally have Google business as their main channel for attracting people. But i- it's kind of stripped of individuality. You can't really tell the difference. And you can put 1,000 pictures of the food. It's not going to make it special. It's not going to give you the vibe, give you all the opportunities your own website can give you.
Yes, that's exactly right. And a restaurant is a perfect example of why there is that symbiotic relationship between Google Business and your brand website for sure.
Hmm. If you had to, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. You had mentioned blogs, and that's another reason why I think it's very important to think strategically about how you want to use your website. There's nothing worse than going to a website where you're interested in the brand, you want to learn more about it, and you click on blog because it seems like, as you said, that's a main item in the navigation, and
Hmm.
then there hasn't been a post for 5 years or four
Oh
years.
yeah.
That looks just as bad. It looks bad also. That reflects poorly on your brand. So thinking really strategically about what is the purpose of your website, how does it support my social channels, and not kind of over committing to what you want it to do.
Yeah, and I keep hearing from a lot of entrepreneurs, from solopreneurs who have to wear many hats and do all those things themselves, and sometimes they don't have a budget for outsourcing it, so they try to DIY it. Nothing wrong with that if they can figure it out, but sometimes they realize that it's too time consuming. You just can't do strategy for 5 different social media channels and then keep your blog up to date and your content and your product pages on the website. So it's just too much and people
Too much.
burn out. So you probably heard a lot of stories from your customers who tried that and then they're like, it's just too much. I can't handle it. At what point do they come to you?
Well, hopefully, sometimes they come to us with those ideas, and we say, let's slow down. Let's think realistically about what you can and you can't do. Um, and so what we try to support our clients in really wherever they're at. We meet them where they are, and a lot of times um, that means posting content, writing content, obviously building websites. Unfortunately, there's core business things that we can't do. Right? We're never going to be as experts in the product in the same way that our clients are. We're never going to be able to fulfill and ship an online sale for them. Like that's something that they have to do. So we try to set expectations and work with them where they're at and help come up with solutions that meet their business goals um, in the way that works best for their business, but also the type, their industry also. Trying to figure out given your industry, what should you be doing online? What should your website be doing? What do your customers expect? Some industries, customers do expect, thought leadership. They expect thought
Mhm.
leadership, and that means you're going to have to produce content regularly. A restaurant, they don't, customers don't expect thought leadership from a restaurant. They want to know where it is. I want to see how beautiful the food looks. I want to learn about the menu. and I want to make a reservation. I want to go. Um, and during that process, they hopefully are very impressed by the branding and the website, and will come away from it with a warm and fuzzy feeling. So it's a very different purpose. So that's a really important part of working with our clients, is helping them understand what the role is of their website.
Yeah, I completely agree. And although there are some examples, some exceptions, say thought leadership and restaurant. Think of El Arroyo, the
Yeah,
memes that they post. That's thought leadership to me. That's great
yeah,
branding strategy. But unfortunately, they've done it. They covered that niche, so other restaurants have to figure something for themselves. And talking about expectations from customers and from businesses, when you start thinking about a website for your particular niche, what platform should you go with? What factors should you consider when you're picking a platform? Because there are so many options, and when you look at one, sponsored ads show you 1,000 more, and it looks like they're all so nice and so user friendly and so helpful. So
yeah,
how not to get overwhelmed?
yeah. I there are a lot, and there are a lot of good ones, and there are bad ones, and um, without going in too much depth into specific platforms, I would step back and say, first question is, what's the primary purpose of your website? Um, what timeline do I need to get my website up online in,
Mhm.
and what's my budget? So those three factors can really help you decide what the best platform is, and if you need to engage an agency or a developer to help you. Um, for example, if you want to sell things on your website, then you absolutely, and that's the primary purpose of it, then you would want to go to, most likely choose an e-commerce first type of platform. Of course, everyone's heard of Shopify. They're the biggest
Mhm.
e-commerce platform. Very easy to get up online with Shopify. It does not require much development, but it's also limited, right? And it might not necessarily, for example, it might not be good at other things. Like if thought leadership is a very important part of your business, Shopify is not going to be a good platform to produce
Mhm.
content. And so I would first ask, what is the purpose of my website? What do I want to do with it? And then the second thing is, what's my budget and timeline? Shopify also pretty fast and pretty affordable to get online with. Um, but however, let's say you have you want to create an e-commerce website, and you have a ERP system, or you have a factory, and you need to make sure that orders
Mhm.
get properly, routed and shipped into your factory. That is more complex. That's not something necessarily you could just sign up for Shopify and just click a button and that's going to start working. That might be the case where you need a professional developer to come in and help out. Um, if you're not selling anything online, there are a lot of other options such as Squarespace, Wix, WordPress. I would say at a high level, the main differences are something like Squarespace or Wix. Those are hosted platforms, meaning that you pay them to do the hosting. They manage the back end of it. All you have to do is you sign up, you connect your domain, you click publish, and then you have your website. Of course, that's simplifying a little bit. The
Mhm.
disadvantage is those platforms, you can quickly outgrow them very quickly, depending on your business. If I'm just trying to get off the ground and I have a restaurant, and I just need a page for my menu, my contact page, my about page, and that's it. Squarespace or Wix will get you there very quickly. However, as soon as you start to add functionality, if you want to start doing more advanced search engine optimization, SEO, which I'm sure we'll cover, or if you want to start doing more landing pages where you're actually doing lead generation, you can start getting into situations where you'll very quickly outgrow those platforms. So they're a good play. They're often a good way to get off the ground, but they're not necessarily the best long-term solution. Um, Generally speaking, for a mature business that you really want to have a more robust functionality, that's when you start getting it over into what we might call open source platforms. And open source means that the code is completely freely available, and that a developer can do many more things with it, and they can build custom functionality for you that might not be available from something like Squarespace or Wix. Now, of course, that does cost more money. It takes more time, but I think the results can be much more powerful and can make your business run more efficiently in many cases, and have a better result. And in that kind of group of platforms, we have like WordPress is one of the most common ones.
Mhm.
There's also some other ones called like Drupal and some other platforms that are less common. I think probably everybody's familiar with WordPress. Um,
Mhm.
WordPress is an interesting example because I think that they've tried to position themselves and they're competing with companies like Squarespace and Wix. However, and I think that's deceptive, and I think that because of that, it makes it seem like it's an easy way to get your website online. But I
It's
think,
not
yeah,
for users, regular
exactly.
users.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think, and then when you actually get into the nuts and bolts of it, you realize like this is a little more complicated than I was expecting. And so you can really fall into a trap with WordPress if you're not careful. So I would recommend WordPress if you're working with a developer. If you have someone who is a WordPress expert on your team who can really help guide the WordPress project, because it really can be a can of worms if you're not, if you kind of fall for that like ease of use marketing angle, it's really easy to fall into it and then kind of get burned by it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I see a lot of businesses use WordPress for their websites, and it's not really foolproof. So you need to have your checklist and do your homework, because a lot of times you open the website and you see the button doesn't lead anywhere. You click the button and it doesn't, or like you click the social media links and they take you to WordPress social media, not the ones that people input,
Mhm.
or they have a lot of sections that are attractive, like you mentioned before, blog. You click on it and it's empty, like nothing was put in it. So you can't, unfortunately, it's not just one button. You can't do it with one button. And I know there are manuals out there, like a 30-minute crash course into Elementor for WordPress, and you
Mm.
watch it and you're like, wow, it's so easy. And then you try to recreate it and you're like, did I miss something? Like there are so many other things that I didn't see. So
You
definitely have it checked at least by someone who knows what they're doing.
because we do a lot of WordPress development, and I love WordPress, and I think that we've used it to create amazing experiences on the internet for our clients. But I would love to show you our checklists that we use. I mean, we have hundreds of items in our checklists that go,
Mhm.
that cover every possible aspect, from search engine optimization to page speed, which is very important now, um, to user experience, to little things like common things we see all the time. Someone will launch a website and they'll forget to set, where does the form go when someone submits
Mhm.
the form, and then
Yeah.
months later they think, no one's ever contacted me through my form, and then they realize, oh, I never added an email address for it to go to. So there's things like that. There's hundreds of things. And so we try to be really, really thorough when we're building WordPress sites, to really dot every I, cross every T, because as you said, the devil's in the details, and it's really easy
Mm.
to get in over your head with a platform like WordPress, which is deceptively simple on the surface.
Yeah, I just the other day I saw someone's website. It looked very professional. The pictures were beautiful. The experience was beautiful. But then you scroll down and there is a big button and says button text.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
people didn't change it into, and there is nothing wrong. We are all human, but if you are going for a platform that's more hands-on than say Squarespace or Wix, then make sure that you checked it or you asked someone to look at it. Because I remember I once showed my own website to a friend of mine and I was like, look, there is this cool website. She's like, uh, what does it do? Where is the so she couldn't, she's like, it's all pretty, but I don't understand what I need to do here. And I'm like, ah. So
yeah.
because you are on the back end of it, you planned it from the ground up. You know what you wanted to put in it. You don't know how it's perceived by other people. So that's important too.
Yes, absolutely, and a QA process is very important, a part of our process, and should be a part of any website design development process. But to your point, that is the kind of thing that gets missed when you're trying to do it yourself and get it off the ground quickly. You forget those little things and you leave, buttons that just say button text here on the website. And so having a second set of eyes, or multiple sets of eyes, actually, is how we do it. Things like, for example, checking it in every browser. You may use Google Chrome, you may use Microsoft Edge, and you think my website looks great, but everyone who's on their Android phone has a horrible experience, but you just don't know that because you don't have an Android and you don't use a mobile Android browser. So, those kinds of things. There's so many things like that you really have to check. And at the end of the day, it represents your brand, and you're putting something out there that could reflect poorly on your brand and create a negative customer perception, because you didn't know to check. You didn't know to check the 6 major browsers or however many it is. You didn't know to check it on tablet, mobile, et cetera, or you didn't know how to, or whatever the case might be. So I would recommend that you reach out to people, even if you don't hire an agency, at least reach out to your friends, your network, to get feedback, to have them look at your website. That's really important, because I know it is true, not everybody can afford to hire an agency, and they don't have the timeline or the budget. But at least, reach out to your own network, see if there's someone who you can buy lunch for and sit down and ask them some questions, see what they think. Just getting that additional feedback can greatly improve the quality.
Yeah, never afraid to ask for feedback. Never be afraid to just ask people for their honest opinion. Maybe they will be too nice and they'll say, "Yeah, it's all great, it's beautiful." Or maybe they'll just point out something you didn't notice, and maybe an annoying typo. Maybe your website is not loading on their phone for 20 seconds, and this is how you lose your customers. You only have one chance to make the first impression, and you don't want to mess it up. So you want it to be a really good impression. So let's jump to, we have a lot of questions. And while we have you here, you mentioned a lot of scary words like hosting and domain names. And there are some others that I don't know, honestly. What are they and why should we know about them? Because we know there is website, we know there is landing page. What else do we need to know?
Yeah. So on a high level, I think maybe it makes sense to just kind of define those terms, and then also maybe go over some of the pitfalls that I see small business owners falling into when they try to set up their websites related to those things. So a domain is just, workhorsемkt.com. That's our domain. That's just the name that exists. That's generally what your website would be, mysmallbusiness.com. So in order to secure a domain, you have to go to a registrar. And a registrar is a company. Some of the big ones are Godaddy, Network Solutions, probably heard these names. You secure your domain, gives you basically ownership of that domain. Now that is separate from the hosting. So web hosting is actually where the files and the code of the website live. And you can think of that almost literally just like a file on your computer. It's the same thing. It's a computer that's on the internet that has all the files and the code for your website, and often a database like where your content would be stored. And so those are different things. And so what I think a lot of times these companies, they really muddy the water, and they'll try to sell you everything. So you go to GoDaddy, you'll say, I know I need a domain name. I know my cool new smallbusiness.com. That's what it is. I'm ready to go. And when you go to GoDaddy and you try to sign up for your domain and register your domain, they will try to sell you everything else. They'll try to sell you the hosting. They'll bundle it. It'll create this perception that it's kind of one thing. And also email, for example, generally you'll want email associated with your domain business. They try to
and
bundle
storage space. They also offer storage space and a protection plan.
Yes.
And coffee mug.
And, yeah. And I will say, and I mentioned GoDaddy because they're one of the worst at this, and I really would I'm not going to recommend you don't go to GoDaddy, but I would definitely say if they're trying to sell you something, be very leery of it because they really try to add on um, everything. And what can end up happening is you can end up paying for services for years and years and years that you just don't need, that you never needed. So that's a huge pitfall with some of these companies that try to really conflate all these things together. Get your website online now. We'll make sure we'll give you your domain, your hosting, your email, your privacy protection, your this, your that, the other thing, and they try to bundle it together, and that can be that can cost you money that you don't need to spend. As a matter of fact, I would often recommend securing these things separately. So know you need to go get a domain. That's the first step. You need your domain name. Aside from the website, that's step two. Go to a company, a domain registrar that someone's recommended to you, ask around, and just register the domain. Don't worry about the hosting. Don't worry about your email yet. Save that stuff for later. But just make sure you own that domain name. Those other things you can add on. You can add on later because they really get conflated and confusing. But at the core, they're all different products. There's the domain, which you do need a registrar to get, like GoDaddy. There's the hosting where your files live. Your email services can be provided by the same company. Sometimes they are. Sometimes you can go directly to a vendor like Google Workspace, which is a popular one, or
Mhm.
Office 365 from Microsoft, which is also very popular. You don't have to get those products all from the same place. So
And
uh,
they will work with your domain name. Some
and
people
they
think that
always
if
will
they
do
buy
that.
it from Google, it has to be gmail.com. That's not true. You
That's,
can
yes,
input your domain name, you just have to confirm that you authorize it, and it will
yes,
work.
that's true. And that's where one of the other buzzwords that comes in is DNS, and that's where all those records come in. So for example, if I have a domain name mycoolbusiness.com, I can say, okay, well, it's hosted over here, so I need to point the domain. DNS stands for domain name system, and that refers to, as it applies to your domain, all of the different records that say where things are related to your domain. They can say, over here is my email at Google. Over here is my website at this other company at Squarespace or Wix or wherever. Over here is my um, business, my intranet for my employees. Over here is my whatever it is. So the DNS tells the world, actually, who try to go to those services. They try to send, somebody tries to send you an email. Somebody tries to go to your website. Your DNS says, here's where that is. It's over here. And at its core, that's all it is. But changing it, editing it, modifying it can be very intimidating and very scary, and actually also cause downtime on your website. I have multiple clients um, try to set up a service, and in the instructions it says, please change your DNS to activate this service. And then so they follow the instructions, and then they call panicking, my website went down, my email's not working. And it's because because they changed something that broke those services. So I would say just
Mhm.
be very careful when you're modifying your DNS. When any service asks you to change your DNS, you have to be very careful. And again, ask somebody. Definitely reach out to somebody. A lot of companies, even us, even if you're hesitant to spend a lot of money, you don't have the budget quite yet. It doesn't cost money to ask, to reach out and say, hey, I have a question. Maybe it only takes someone 30 minutes or an hour to help you, and so there's not a huge investment. But asking a professional, especially when it comes to DNS, can be very important. So that is one of the situations where I'd say you absolutely want to reach out to an expert, because you can cause your website to go down. You can cause your email to break if you're not careful.
Absolutely. And it seems like such a little trifle thing. And you think your website is kind of working. Why should you bother about DNS and everything? And then people complain that your mail goes to spam all the time. And you're like, well, it happens. What? And then someone who knows something, they're like, well, you actually didn't change the DNS that approves your use of this mail provider or whatever. And you change it and miracle happens. And you're like, why didn't I ask? Why did I? I should have done it from the very beginning. I missed so many business opportunities because all my mail was blacklisted by the official providers, and it's just in that little line of code.
That is a perfect example of why, yeah, you should definitely reach out to an expert when it comes to DNS. And that example, I see that probably, I don't know, once a month. A client approaches us, my email is going to spam, and exactly what you said. Oh, you didn't set up the proper authentication that says, hey, my email, I use Google Workspace for my email. I'm basically setting up the records to say, I authorize Google to send on my behalf. And you miss those things because they're actually not required to get your email running, but they are
It
very,
lets you do it.
yeah, they're very important to do. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of details like that.
Yeah, so it's just one example of many where you can, where all your efforts, all your budget, all your expenses can go to waste if you're just not hitting the target, and you're doing it because one checkbox is missing, is not
Yeah.
ticked. So I highly encourage people to ask the experts, outsource your job to them, or at least ask for a consultation. It will pay off definitely in the future.
Oh yeah, especially, I mean, if you think about spam email, if your email is
Mhm.
going to spam and you're missing leads, spending a few hours with an agency to help you get your emails out of spam. I mean, that's customers right there that you're not losing. So
Yeah, absolutely. Because also, for example, newsletters are one of the most efficient ways of marketing. And I read somewhere that for $1 of money spent on setting up your newsletter, you get $40 worth of returns if you do it correctly. So why not utilize this tool? Only that you lose all this opportunity if most of your emails go to spam.
yeah.
So you could have really made a change in your business if you did it correctly from the very beginning. So again, please do it correctly. Ask someone who knows how to do it. Don't try to DIY it, even if it's seemingly simple. It will be very rewarding to ask a specialist, and then they're like, "No, you did everything correctly." Can you imagine that being like, "I,
And
I nailed it."
that happens. People, there are a lot of people who are tech savvy and who maybe came from a tech background before starting their business, and maybe they feel comfortable with this. But a lot of that does depend on you being honest with yourself about what your skill set is and what you feel comfortable doing and not doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's jump to the next question, which is even more relevant in terms of marketing. Um, I guess they're both relevant, but still. So, SEO, what is it? Why do people keep talking about it? Why did it become this buzzword that people can't seem to go past without anxiety?
Yeah. So SEO stands for search engine optimization, and it is the process of increasing your position in the search engine rankings. Google is of course, the biggest one, but obviously there are other search engines like Bing, DuckDuckGo, and some what we might call longer tail search engines. Primarily, people focus on Google, of course, because it dominates. Um,
Hmm.
and it's a very there's a lot to it. There's three big buckets of SEO. Um, there's on-page SEO, which is your content, writing your content, optimizing your content so that it shows up well in search engines. Then there's off-page SEO. One thing that search engines value greatly is how many people are linking back to your website, how many mentions of your brand are there, for example. And that's search engines see that as a sign of approval. That if all these websites are linking back to your website, that means you must be offering something of value. So that's off-page SEO. And then the third one is technical SEO, which is the coding of my website. How is it coded? Is it coded correctly so that search engines can properly access and crawl my content? And between those three buckets of types of SEO, there are a lot of strategies. It's very easy to find guides online, how to optimize my site for SEO, how to increase my ranking in search engines. I find that most people, when they try to tackle this on their own, it's very challenging to do without someone who specializes in search engine optimization. And I think, unfortunately, they can also, when they do reach out to people, they can oftentimes be sold unrealistic expectations about what's possible. I think it's very important to level set also when we're talking about SEO. So, for example, if I'm selling furniture, I'm in Austin, and I have I make my own furniture, I have my own showroom, and I'm selling furniture. I might want to rank for furniture, handmade furniture.
Hmm.
Well, if you search for handmade furniture right now, you're probably competing with businesses all over the country. You're competing with companies that are spending a lot of money on search engine optimizations. Be very hard to show up number one in Google for handmade furniture. So I think part of the process of getting started on SEO is just level setting and recognizing realistically with my budget, with the industry I'm in, what can I do? So that's something that if you reach out to an agency, you want to be very wary if someone says, "Oh yeah, you want to rank number one in Google for handmade furniture? Pay us this much money every month, and we'll get you there." You always want to be very wary about that. So unfortunately, there's a lot of people that say they do SEO, and so you want to be very careful about reaching out to companies. And engaging a company until you've vetted them very thoroughly. And again, that can be going back to your network and asking, does anyone know any SEO agencies they've worked with that could work with my budget that have shown good results? Because at the end of the day, I think search engine optimization is a very technical task, and generally, it does require an expert to help you out. As a matter of fact, you could often make your search ranking worse by doing it
Oh,
incorrectly.
yeah.
You could really cause problems for your website and cause it to rank lower in search engines if you don't do it correctly. So I wish it were an easier thing because it is so important for small businesses, but it's just unfortunately extraordinarily complex. Um, yeah, so that's what I would say is always level set, be careful when you reach out to an agency, make sure you really vet them, ask for advice before you go too deeply into it. Certainly research it on your own, learn about it, but also recognize similar to the DNS questions, recognize when you've kind of reached your level that you feel comfortable before proceeding.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to, without recommendation, it's hard to understand the level of this expert who you're talking to, because SEO, unlike say graphic design, it's a very behind the scenes kind of work. There is not like visual mood board result that you'll see from when people are telling you what they do, because it's a lot of technical work, it's a lot of back end behind the scenes work. So unless you've seen someone who says, yeah, I worked with that person and they really made some progress with my website, I wouldn't go to a professional like that, because you won't be able to judge, and you'll be paying for several months until you've actually realized that it's not working for you, because there
Yeah,
are no fast results there, and they will keep telling you it's not an overnight thing, you have to wait, trust the method. But how can you tell if you're trusting the method and waiting, or if you're just wasting your time and money?
it's a tough one. Yeah, that's absolutely true because the results do take time. They absolutely take a lot of time. So it's unfortunate because as a small business owner, it's as you said, it's not something that you can just pay for and then know quickly if you made a good investment or not.
Mhm.
You may be deep in it before you realize like this isn't working. So that's why it's really important to reach out, get recommendations, talk to agencies, interview them, uh, find people you trust before you proceed along that route.
Yeah, definitely. Very good advice. And not the last but not the least is the question that everyone is asking: should I be using paid ads, and can I DIY my way through it? Because a lot of things like Google and Facebook ads, they constantly offer you to, oh, promote this post, oh, run this ad. It's so simple. Just click here and there, and we know who to show it to. And you just need, $15 a day, and that's it.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah. They'll really push. I get calls from a Facebook rep every week. Sometimes he'll call me and then about one client, and then 10 minutes later he'll call me about a different client, not realizing that he just called me to basically get us to advertise more. So yeah, there's a lot of that. And so what's interesting about paid ads, there's some interesting, I think, comparisons we can make to SEO. So one thing about paid search is that unlike SEO, the results are quantifiable usually,
Mhm.
and they're quantifiable relatively quickly. So in other words, if I start running Google ads, I should be able to know, am I achieving my goals with these Google ads based on code that you can place on your website that says, yes, my goal was completed. So for example, if I'm advertising, if I sell things on my website, well, if someone clicks from an ad, they make a purchase. Well, that I know that I got that click, I paid a couple bucks for it or whatever it was, and I got a purchase off of it. That's quantifiable. Much harder with SEO. So that's something that's nice about paid search that I really like. And so it's something that you should definitely explore as a shortcut. I don't want to say a shortcut, as a supplement to any SEO activities, because it can really get your business off the ground and do it in a way that you can shift quickly if it's not working, because it is quantifiable, which is something that's much harder with search engine optimization. Um, it does, though, similar to SEO, it is something where if you're not careful, you can really spend a lot of money and not get good results. So it is something that while you can DIY it, um, you can spend a lot of money doing that without getting many results, and oftentimes not knowing why you didn't get results. So oftentimes having an agency who specializes in paid search to help you out, who can iterate on your campaigns, who can modify, who can give suggestions based on successes and failures you're having with your campaigns, and really stays on top of it, that can be really valuable. So I would recommend you oftentimes most businesses do want to do paid search. Not always. I'm sure there's certainly industries where it maybe isn't as applicable. But it is a good idea generally, and it is also the case that you want to reach out to an expert to make sure you're not throwing away money. Because an expert,
Mhm.
the other thing is an expert can help you better quantify your spend. They can help you get the code on your site that can tell them, are these campaigns working? Sometimes that can be very confusing if you're a small business owner. Again, when you log into an ad platform, it says, oh, we need to have all these different tracking codes on your website. Well, I don't know how to do that, so I'm just going to run the campaign, and then all your money's kind of going into a black hole, and you don't really know what you're getting out of it. So an expert can help you configure your website so that you can actually get actionable data out of those campaigns. Did it work? Didn't it work? What's working? What's not working?
Mhm.
The second part, I think, was on what network. So there are so many places to advertise right now. Really, a huge part of it depends on your audience, I think. Um, where is your audience? Is your audience visual? Is what your product it looks like very important. Instagram, for example, if I'm a jeweler and I make handmade jewelry, Instagram might be a really good place for me to advertise. Maybe not Facebook. Who is my demographic audience that I'm marketing to? Is it Gen Z? Probably we
Mhm.
won't advertise on Facebook. Whatever the case might be, it's really comes down to your audience, figuring out where they are and focusing your efforts there. And that could be something that you may know. You may have a really good intuition about that because it's your business. You know who's buying your product and who is interested in it. It also could be something that an agency or an expert could provide some more guidance on in terms of, have you thought about this channel? You may not have. So yeah.
Yeah, it's such a vast topic, and people can get confused and lost a lot of times because they get this positive reinforcement from the ad provider pushing to promote more. So you think that if you're not promoting, you're missing out, and they like click, click, and sometimes you click and you're already halfway through uh, authorizing the promoted ad, but you didn't want to. So it becomes so automatic that it just wants you to do it without you knowing. Um, I'm gonna uh, say several statements that I heard from experts from different fields around paid ads. And can you help me bust or confirm those statements if they're myths or not about paid ads? The first one, you have to surgically niche down your audience, otherwise, your ad won't work. Is it a myth or?
I will say that my area of expertise is on the technical side. It's a little less on the paid side. I work with our paid search specialist, so I will do my best to answer questions about paid search. But I will say for both SEO and paid search, definitely finding a niche can be much more successful and help you optimize your spend. Um, for example, as it relates to SEO, a lot of times, as I was mentioning, you may not be able to rank for handmade furniture, but you might be able to rank for, old, I don't know the terms, old oak handmade
Mhm.
furniture in Austin, or, something like that, that's a much more specific. And so for both SEO and paid search, I would say, yes, the more specific you can get, the better. And there are so many tools now available to help you really hone in on those groups and really target your advertising to them. And actually, that doesn't just apply to SEO and paid search; it also applies to email marketing, for that matter. We
Mhm.
touched on that a little bit. I would kind of wish we would have talked about it a little more, but it also applies to email marketing, really segmenting your audience. Sending emails, optimizing your site around what your audience is interested in can be very valuable, help optimize the amount of money you spend across all of these different channels.
Yeah, don't ever advertise everything to everyone because you'll never catch anyone. It's going to be too generic, too salesy, too yellow pagey, and
Mhm.
it's not going to look authentic.
That's how you get unsubscribes. That's how you lose money, you spend money, unnecessarily. It's just, it's, there's nothing really good comes of it, especially
Yeah.
the fragmented, the internet is now, with these hyper local, hyper focused communities, interests, things like that.
Yeah, sometimes some newsletter looks like it's a personal email to you, and you realize that they are narrowing down so much to nail you as representative of some demographic that they do have a very compelling message that you just can't, you want to open and you want to read it, and then you might realize it's actually an ad, it's an offer, but you do open it, you do get interested rather than just I don't know, big deal open today. And
Yeah.
it's for some, elderly people clothing, and you don't have anyone elderly in your household, and it's from another state. So it's,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's frustrating because people are busy also. And even if it takes them, I don't know, 15 seconds to realize that that's not applicable to them, it's annoying. People,
Mhm.
for a long time, I shopped at a business online, and for some reason, they pegged me as really needing and wanting yoga pants. I've bought men's pants from you many times. Why do you keep offering to sell me yoga pants? And I just unsubscribed because it was such an obvious mistake that it was frustrating, and I wasn't getting anything relevant anymore, even though theoretically they did know what I was purchasing and what I was interested in. And so, yes, absolutely, making sure not making those kind of mistakes, you can lose customers for sure.
Yeah, it's a very big caution for everyone who is starting. And the last myth that, or maybe not myth, which is very important because small businesses are always concerned about the marketing budget. So I heard that unless you can pay $1,500 for the ads every month, they're not going to work for you. Is it true? Is it true partially depending on your business? Is it not true?
Um, I think it really depends on your business, and this is an area that I would not feel 100% confident going too deeply into because I don't do paid search for our
Mhm.
company. I will say we engage clients at all levels in terms of their spend that they have every month for paid search. you can see success for less than that. Obviously, the more you spend, generally speaking, the better results will be. It also really depends on your business, your industry, how local are you. There's a lot of factors. If you're a startup and you're really trying to break into a big national industry, you definitely will need to spend more than that. I would say. But if you're a restaurant and you have one location or two locations, or if you're a small business on the corner that makes furniture, like the example I was using, you might in those scenarios that might not be the case. So it really depends on your business. It depends on your industry. And um, again, I would say reach out to your network, ask agencies, have consultations. A lot of them will be, obviously agencies want your business, but they'll also be frank. A lot of times, if they're good and they're honest, they'll say, you know what you're trying to do, that's just not enough money, and they'll be honest with you. And if they're not, and if you don't, if they've come, if you get a bad vibe, then go somewhere else. Ask around, find people that are trusted in your community to give you that kind of advice as to who will be honest with us about what we need to be spending.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I encourage more people to go to Workhorse Marketing because it's a very honest team. They won't take you on unless they know that they can help you for sure. And thank you for this interview and all the advice you provided. Thomas Bacon, Chief Technology Officer from Workhorse Marketing.
Thank
And
you very much. It was very fun. Appreciate
yeah,
you.
it was fun. And remember that in marketing, advertising, websites, there is no size that fits all, no solution, no yoga pants that fits all. Thomas just proved it. So, thank
Great.
you so much and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.